The debate over education spending stretches beyond just this year's budget. The New York State Association of School Business Officials and several other groups have recommended a $2 billion increase. That's twice what Governor Cuomo is now proposing. And the association is also pushing for changes to foundation aid over the next 3 years at a total of $4.3 billion, but not doing away with foundation aid altogether, which of course is what the governor has proposed, or so it seems. Here to join us, we have the association's executive director, Michael Borges. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
So you were with us pre-budget.
Correct.
And now you are with us post-budget, so after you've seen the details. The rollout was a little bit rocky, and it wasn't immediately clear what the details were. The governor said $1 billion, and everyone was like, oh, okay, that's less than what you wanted, obviously, less than what the regents wanted, but maybe that wasn't, so terrible. But then, of course, the devil's always in the details.
Correct. And this is sort of the tale of the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good being that the governor did include 3 of our recommendations that our Foundation Aid Task Force suggested be made to improve the Foundation Aid formula in terms of the governor included removing the 0.65 floor in terms of the wealth index, so that really poor school districts will get actually more aid. Mm-hmm. He also included using the small area poverty and wealth index by the Census Bureau to calculate poverty. So that's a good thing instead of using the 2000 census. And he's also recommending using direct certification data, which is the data that the counties can produce using mm-hmm. Medicaid and mm-hmm. all kinds of information, instead of using the free and reduced price lunch as an indication of poverty. And they're going to phase that in over 3 years.
Right, but what's unclear to me is why you would bother making changes to something that ostensibly you don't want to keep.
Well, we had that same discussion recently, and it's sort of like if you're, that's the bad part of this tale, is that the governor is basically disconnecting the foundation aid formula from the phase-in amount. So back in 2007, then Governor Spitzer in the legislature, as a result of the Campaign for Fiscal Equity, the CFE mm-hmm. court case, decided, mm-hmm. We're going to have to spend more money to provide a sound basic education.
Right.
The CFE case was just basically for New York City. It was like 1.8 or 1.9 billion dollars. The legislature and the governor said, well, we just can't do this for New York City. We're going to have to do this for the whole state. So they came up with a big number. I don't know, whatever the number was. Now it's $4.3 billion. That in order to provide a sound basic education to all students in the state using factual data, we're not going to do that anymore.
But stop for just 1 second.
Sure.
Governor Cuomo has never felt beholden to that settlement. So it's not a secret, and it really shouldn't be terribly surprising that he has said it was aspirational, I think, the settlement, and that he didn't strike that settlement, obviously. Part of the problem has always been that it was a settlement that was agreed upon, and then the court said, well, it's not our position or our responsibility to make sure that the executive branch and the legislative branch are actually fulfilling the agreement, because we're a separate branch of government and we don't like meddling in their affairs anyway, and they were uncomfortable enough making the decision, finally settling the case. So I guess there are other ways for him to go around this, but it's not shouldn't come as a shock.
Well, no, it's not a shock, but it seemed unnecessary. As we were talking off camera, this would have been a pretty dull year, realistically, in terms of education in the budget.
Yeah, you'd fight about dollars.
Right, we're going to fight about dollars. The governor proposed, his $428 million increase in foundation aid. We would have danced with the legislature about getting more money and, ending up with maybe 500, 600 million more. But now he threw into the mix this whole disconnect of the phase-in, and so he sort of added, fuel to the fire, unnecessarily so, I think, from my standpoint. But the thing is that a lot of work. There was a lot of consensus that the foundation aid formula was a step in the right direction, and that all the factors that went into it.
If you let it run the way it was supposed to.
If you let it run the way it was supposed to. And it was based on a costing out study. They did a costing out study, and they said, these are the things that are necessary to provide a sound basic education so that kids can graduate, and go to get jobs and, graduate from high school and things like that. And so we're disconnecting the way we fund schools from that premise. And we're just going from year to year,
so
basically saying, this is what we think you should get.
I understand. This is, you say this is unnecessary. Right, so the predictability is out.
Right.
But you say this is unnecessary. You did have a meeting with members of the administration earlier today, and I'm sure you put that question to them, what the heck are you thinking, why are you doing this? And they said...
Well, the premise is and they're right in some degree, is that they've made these changes, which we advocated for, to make the foundation aid formula work better and drive more money to high-need school districts. And this budget and the governor's proposal does drive more money to high-need school districts, and we applaud that. But the problem is that going forward, there's no promise to fulfill what the foundation aid formula intended back in 2007. Again, it disconnects the rationale, the premise upon which foundation aid is based, and it becomes an arbitrary number going forward. It's
and
whatever
also,
they decide to pick out of a hat.
Well, I mean, in some ways that's not so terribly different from what they do now, because they keep, putting little addendums and twists on and mucking around with the formula, and every time you do that to hold districts harmless or to help certain districts against other districts. I understand. I'm just saying it's not that different from it's not a departure really from what they've been doing already. Also, it's not clear to me, the $1 billion in education increase.
961.
Let's not inflate it any more than it ought to be.
And it's really 428.
Well, right, because of the allocation.
If you subtract New York City gets 240 million of it, so we're down to less than that. So it's not a lot of money.
But is it predicated on the extension of the millionaire's tax?
That's what the governor is saying, and I think that that's something the legislature needs to address. I mean, the revenue needs to be there to fund education.
Well, the problem also is that the legislature, as we've discussed many times, only has a certain limited capability. I mean, it can stomp its feet and hold its breath, really, sort of metaphorically speaking. But all it can do is add money, subtract money, and strike money out completely. It can't change language.
Right.
So when it comes to foundation aid, that's a purely negotiated issue, right? And the governor has the upper hand in budget negotiations. He's a very powerful individual personally, and the way it's structurally set up in this state. So what would be the best possible outcome? I mean, the best possible outcome is that they wouldn't be doing this, but I mean, if they, instead of next year, do it over a series of 10 years, or they come up with a replacement formula that would be more predictable for you, or what? I mean, what are you hoping for?
Well, I mean, they had the opportunity when the state received, what was it, $6-8 billion in settlement funds. Mm-hmm. They could have put some of that money aside to fund future education.
Well, some of it's not been spent, actually.
Right. So, there have been opportunities to fulfill the promise of the foundation aid formula. They decided to go in a different direction. So the opportunities have existed. School districts, BOCES, the educational community in general, I mean, we want stability. We want to be able to know, at least going forward, what the promise is of school aid. Again, and a lot of effort and time went into constructing foundation aid and the formula. And ideally, we should let it run as it is intended. Again, the governor's basically hitting the reset button, starting over from scratch, and saying none of that really matters. And it does matter. And it matters to us.
Well, particularly the devil you know, right? I mean, the real terrifying thing is that you don't know what comes down the pike after this. There's
exactly.
Right, okay. So again, this is what we'll be watching for. This is really the crux of the education argument this year. And as you noted, it would have been sort of a sleeper, or a snoozer, rather, I should say. But this sleeper issue has reared its head.
Right.
So we'll have you back periodically throughout the negotiation period. We'll see how things are going. I thank you, Michael, for your time.
Thank you for having me.
As always.